Mark McGann has leaked thousands of documents revealing that Uber had aggressively lobbied top ministers in undeclared meetings. Is this behaviour unique to Uber, or is it indicative of the startup mentality to win at any costs?
I wouldn't have said startup mentality is to win at any costs. There's always a cost of winning. I think it's what you're willing to do in the space in which you play, right? And I think it's back to your values and your behaviours as an organisation and what you want to be. We were talking earlier today from a marketing sense about tone of voice and branding, and I think that travels through into what are you willing to do, how are you willing to market yourself, how out there do you want to put yourself. And in today's world, you have to be a bit edgy to get noticed, right? Otherwise, you're just bland and mundane, and you need to be willing to upset someone in some shape or form. How do you deal with it in your business today?
That's a tricky one. We're in a similar environments, and we're both B2B. And for me, there should be not a sense of formality, but a sense of professionalism. And I don't think we can take the chances that direct-to-consumer startups can, because our pool of customers is much smaller than theirs, and we are incredibly product-driven. And so, for us, I question the value of big marketing spend. I think a lot of it for us is word of mouth and references and just demonstrations of the product. So for us, it's if we can get in front of someone through an introduction or referral, that's worth its weight in gold rather than marketing spend.
So is referral your biggest sales conversion? Is through referral and word of mouth?
It's been good for us. It normally is more of a seals a deal. Customers generally talk to us, get a demo, speak to someone else to get a verdict on us. We found sort of industry consultants a really useful way, just because they've got great networks, they've seen everything else in the market, they know what's good, what's not, and it's great for us because we get feedback on our product as well. So and that's kind of, it builds relationships. They then work with the clients as well, and that strategy works for us. In
that sentiment, you think reading this, Uber did anything wrong? Uber had aggressively lobbied top ministers in undeclared meetings.
Yeah, I think if anything's undeclared, that's a red flag for me. And it goes back to what we said earlier about you should be upholding the spirit of the rules as well as just the lines. I think it's an interesting one. The phrase "win at all costs." I think for us, it's probably survive at all costs. We're not at that stage yet. It's we need to do what we can to survive, but obviously the challenges that we face, it's been very difficult for us to break any rules. Yeah. We're not in a position where we could.
I think it's more about what you said about conduct, isn't it? B2B conduct needs to be seen to be at the right level of professionalism. Yeah. I read this statement and at face value, I don't think Uber have done anything wrong per se to aggressively lobby. That's sales, right? So you expect your guys to be aggressively selling your product all the time, right? In the right spirit of the manner, in the right term of aggressive, not actually aggressive, just doing it with sort of dedication and a bit of drive, right? Yeah. Undeclared meetings, that's a minister's problem.
Maybe. I see what you're saying, and that Uber did nothing wrong. It was the ministers that should have.
Yeah, so if you went and sold your product, your sales guys went and sold your product to a company, and they had a policy where they should declare any sales meeting they've got with the product, that wouldn't be your fault, would it?
No, but I think if I think about what Uber's done, I think they have gone for sort of the land grab strategy. They've gone for the classic act first, ask for forgiveness, and lobby for forgiveness. And I think that is slightly different. Because it would almost be like if I sold a product that harmed people's health and I hadn't gone through the right approval processes to get my product approved, whatever it may be, and then to lobby the government to change that regulation once I've been found out. That to me doesn't seem like a right way to go about doing things. Regulation is there to protect the customer. There are lots of customers that need regulation to help them make an informed decision.
I think it sounds like you know more about this specific topic than I do, so I'm going to probe a little bit into that. So there's a lot of things in terms of. I used to deal with a lot of regulation, having both of us have got overlap in Barclays, right? So I used to deal with a lot of regulation in Barclays, and at the time it was when we was moving to mobile technologies. Mobile technologies predominantly, other than BlackBerry, which they cornered them, owned the market until they were disrupted by the iPhone. And what started happening then was a consumer tech started to come in. So we would, and to use the word, we would lobby regulators because their policies were out of date against the tech that was being used, right? So they'd ask for things that had no equivalent in modern tech. So you could say, well, I can't really comply with your policy because that particular thing doesn't exist in new technology. Do you feel that was the way that Uber was taking this, or was they literally trying to say you need to change it and for the worst, rather than it needs to be modernised?
I can't remember if this is completely correct, but from memory, what I read at one point is that whilst Boris Johnson was Mayor of London, he was refusing to bend TfL rules for Uber to let them operate in London. It was something like that. There was certain restrictions they had to comply with. Someone they lobbied had a big stake in a fund that was invested in Uber. Uber knew that person on first name terms and said, we need to get them to put pressure on Boris Johnson so we can act as we want. Act as Uber, so Uber can get the regulation changed how they want it to. And that's when I think it gets a bit...
But what was the regulation to operate in London?
I can't remember exactly. It would have been something to do with the 5-minute waiting rule, that if you pre-book it, if you're doing a pre-booked minicab, the earliest you can book it is 5 minutes in advance.
Right.
And so the Uber on-demand model would have fallen foul of this. And so there was pressure to change that so you could do like an instant book.
You can see what I'm saying though, because what you know about it and what I was saying about what we was doing, there's a level of, well, that's the modern way the world is going, this internet ordering. So you're just trying to stop progress for something that's old and draconian and needs to be rebooted and updated. Right or wrong? You need to decide kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
It is tough.
Yeah, you got the whole thing about competition and locking out into an area because that's Transport for London, right? They want to keep the competition out, but you let the competition in, and back to what we do, the best product, may the best products win kind of thing in the space, and the most innovative and those that have got the best team behind it. If you were locked out of something because of a regulation, you'd be a bit... We see it actually. So we see less so. We used to see a lot of no cloud policy in big companies until they sort of understood the cloud was secure enough, etc. And that's almost, you're forgoing yourself a lot of opportunity because you're trying to manage risk, but your policy is such a blanket statement that who's it benefiting?
Yeah. You're protecting yourself from a world that's 5 years old. Yeah, things have moved on. You need to update. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, and you see like Boris and his innovation track. It's hard to innovate when you've got old policies, right?
I think just to do one more thing though, there are other examples of this kind of behaviour though. Quite recently, I saw an article on I think it's Glovo, the basic report came out that they were completely ignoring any kind of advice from their internal counsel on competition. And they had worked with Delivery Hero and kind of colluded and were breaking antitrust laws, and the founders just had no regard for the rules around competition. They saw competition as bad, whereas the council were like, no, competition is kind of essential. You can't be a monopoly. Yeah. We have to respect the rules. And they tried to exit a country, did it, and then the regulators forced them back into it. And they did eventually exit again. I think it was Egypt. But I think that is another example of founders just ignoring what the legislation says. Whether it's across every founder, I don't know. But again, becoming a founder attracts a certain type of personality. And it is, I'm going to do this at all costs, or I'm going to do this when everyone tells me I'm wrong. And I think it's understandable that those personalities might not see the rules in the same way.
We are living through these times of, I think, where everything was pre-internet, not even sort of necessarily pre-internet, but pre kind of these gig economy Uber connectivity where it was all reliant on geographic boundaries, right? And all the policies were written about a geographic boundary. And the more and more we evolve into this internet, everything of things connected everywhere, the digital boundaries are not playing well with the geographic boundaries. And like I said, it's where you get standards like GDPR and stuff that's starting to lock in across Europe, etc. It's starting to normalise. But you're interested over the next decade how that plays out and how the digital economy sets its own policy at an internet level, but and a local geography level, because there's got to be some play or interaction between the two of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many services that, even as a company, we use plenty of SaaS software that comes from the States, and we get billed in dollars, and they've got no footprint in the UK or in Europe. What happens there? Because the sales in the UK technically, but we're paying in dollars, and the payments being processed in the States. Does the UK's regulatory arm reach that far? It's just tricky questions that I don't think, like you said, I don't think the government or the regulators are probably ready for.
Yeah, grey area. Yeah, it takes me back to. Did you see the thing when Mark Zuckerberg met like the committee like a few years ago, and the questions they were asking around digital was like it was embarrassingly bad, and like just the internet and the way that the apps worked, and just sort of that epitomises. That's extreme, right? But that epitomises the difference in understanding and those setting the laws and the policies and regulating it. You almost need specialists from. And I know they do this consulting, right? But you almost need those people to come in and set the policy. But then you've got that concept of back to this, which could be Fox watching Henhouse because it's in their interests. But you need someone who understands it to that degree to police it. Again, I don't know the answer to that.
To keep up with the latest Brooklyn vendor assurance news, subscribe here and follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. Links in the description below.